So, what were your feelings on the return of Picard, or the return of, Captain Jean-Luc Picard?
I am a very old school Star Trek fan. I mean, I'm only 43, so I guess I'm not that old school. But my dad is a big fan of the old series, and I liked the Star Trek movies, and I was very excited in I think fifth grade is when Star Trek: The Next Generation came out, and I loved having a show about space with cool ships, and I got into the novelizations, and it made me into a giant Star Trek fan that kind of only died out halfway through Voyager.
Mhm.
I still watch all the Star Trek movies that come out,
Yeah.
and I at least give, I when Disco came out, I watched a couple episodes and confirmed that, yep, this is still not my Star Trek. So I was originally elated when I saw them wanting to come out with Star Trek Picard because Picard's my favorite captain,
Mhm.
and Star Trek the Next Generation is my favorite era, and they were talking about having this be a return to like the Star Trek of yore, with maybe some more focus on positivity, exploration. I don't know. And then when I got found more and more about it, and I found out how much of the creative team is shared between Star Trek Disco and Picard, I got a little bit disenchanted, and I thought, oh, this is going to be very action hero, you know, Star Trek. It's going to be very new Trek, where it's all
Yeah.
blowing and explosions and lens flares, and I was very pleasantly surprised at how good this first episode of Picard was. Remembrance. It's very nostalgia heavy.
Mhm.
Made my inner Trek fan smile a lot. I got a little choked up in a couple of scenes. I thought it was a very very good way to launch this franchise. It's not quite the return to Roddenberry optimism or even anything
No.
close to it,
No.
but it's probably what it needs to be an interesting and engaging Star Trek in 2020.
Yeah, I mean it's changed because of how television has changed. Everybody's doing serialized stuff. You're not going to get this sort of adventure of the week with a loose uh, sort of connecting thread between a few of the episodes. You're going to get this very connected thing um, that's going to explore fewer themes. Like that's the thing that struck me about the Next Generation and the difference between that and the shows that came after. With the exception of maybe Voyager, you always had like a theme that you were exploring every
Sure.
week, right? It was about like, oh, how hard is it to be a parent, or what is it like to fall in love as a teenager, or like how do we deal with the violation of our own principles,
How
things
do you
like that.
how do you judge the laws and customs of another alien culture?
Yeah, and it seems like they're going to have, some pretty heady themes about, artificial intelligence and what that means as far as like, is this a life form? Should we
Mhm.
give it the same rights? What happens when it rebels and tries to destroy us? Things like that. But you're not going to get the broadness that the Next Generation had, which
Yeah.
to me is what makes the Next Generation interesting.
Hmm.
And it's just a side effect of how we tell stories now
Yeah, and I
on
wonder if
television.
if they can, because like it's funny when you said that, like, you need to be this episodic type of thing or serialized type of thing, and I was thinking about how much success The Witcher had, which was kind of like the X-Files, where you had like a monster of the week that Gerald was going around and fighting and solving and decursing, but there's also this narrative thread that was introducing characters, and it's kind of a blend of the two.
Yeah.
Very similar to kind of, I guess, the first season of Justified, which was kind of
Uh-huh.
like Gangster of the Raylan investigating the Gangster of the
But the,
Week, but there's
the
also episodes that had this continuity. And I wondered if I don't know. I'd be interested. I don't know. I don't know how this first season of Picard is going to go.
Right.
Whether they have in mind like a 2 or 3 season arc with this investigation of this biological robots that Data was getting up to. I don't know how it'll go, but like maybe that's something they could try too, because it seems like there's some shows that are trying to like bridge the best of those worlds, where the best of both worlds,
Mhm.
where you can have the episodic kind of like more free form, unstructured, throw your characters in a bunch of new crazy situations, as well as build those character arcs and still have their very satisfying things that you can only do over the course of years and years of audience engagement. I don't know if they could do it, but I'd like to see. I'd like to see them experiment with it.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, Star Trek Next Generation, I've been rewatching old episodes of that lately, and
Mhm.
it's just hugely nostalgic, and it has to do with I'm just so glad that Next Generation came out in an era when that was possible, and that was actually kind of the sort of rule of the day is like you do all of these very loosely connected episodes because and also honestly I'm glad it came out when it did because I was a kid and I felt like a lot of these thematic explorations were very new to me, things that I had only ever considered on a surface level, if at all. Also, you had 24-ish episodes a season back then, and I don't think the Next Generation withered under that pace. I think there are some bad parts of Next Generation. There are some slow series of episodes, but for the most part, it was able to maintain 24 episodes a season and tell some really strong stories.
And it had so many.
And so I just get more of it, right? Like
Yeah.
nowadays, it would have been a 10 episode or shorter run per season. We'd have like 30 episodes. No, we have like 150 episodes or something of Star Trek Next Generation. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about this format is, like, we talked a lot when we were covering Rick and Morty about how open-ended that series is you could tell any story that you want. You could tell a story out of Game of Thrones. You could tell a story out of Back to the Future. You could tell a story out of Fast Times at Ridgemont High if you wanted to. Star Trek has a lot of that because with the holodeck, with the ability to visit different planets, with the ability to time travel, if you want to have like some fan servicey episode where the crew's fucking around in a holodeck, absolutely you can do that. If you want to go back in time and explore alternate history, you can do that. If you want to see a planet where there's the women are the dominant species and the men are just the less than underclass, you can do that.
Yeah.
And that's such a strength that it feels like Star Trek is largely abandoned in favor of whatever they've been doing for the last 2 decades. And
action.
Yeah.
Yeah.